have, first of all, Miss Susan Payne, who has worked in the emerging markets on both the selling and the buying side for over 20 years. After having been called to the bar in Canada in 1985, Susan joined JP Morgan in 1986, where she was head of emerging market sales Europe. In 1993, Susan joined Goldman Sachs International as an executive director and head of emerging markets debt sales and trading Europe. In 1997, she founded Emergent Asset Management Limited, an award-winning alternative investment firm based in the UK, where Susan managed EM portfolios, as well as focusing on developing the firm's real assets division in Africa through Emergence Pro Alia Management and Invest Asset Management and AgriCorp. We now move on to Marisa Drew, who is a managing director in the investment banking division of Credit Suisse, based in London. She is also co-head of the Global Market Solutions Group and co-head of Leveraged Finance Organization and Restructuring, and a member of the Investment Banking Management Committee. Marisa has an MBA with distinction from Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania. She has been featured in BBC UK's 100 Most Influential Women in UK in 2013 and is consistently ranked among the most respected bankers. And now, of course, we have Arifa. Of course, they must know what you do too, apart from painting such beautiful things. Arifa Khan is the founder of Genius Incubator Limited. She has 8 years investment banking experience in London, specializing in private equity-sponsored leveraged buyout deals, and has worked as an investment banker for 2 Swiss banks, Credit Suisse and UBS. She was most recently Vice President, Leveraged Finance and High Yield Europe. Prior to her investment banking stint, Arifa worked in Mumbai in the financial services sector. She's excited about sectors such as real estate, luxury goods, fashion, media and entertainment, infrastructure, healthcare and education, and is passionate about initiatives to encourage and unleash entrepreneurial ambitions in the young. She is also an amateur fashion designer, painter, as you saw, and writer.
The last I heard from Susan Payne, the first time we met actually was in an 85 Broads meeting. She stood on stage and she gave a talk next to a woman who had gone transatlantic sailing, I think in a record 2 months' time or so. And she came and gave a talk about what led to her success. And I remember what she said about what really influenced her. She said her dad told her, just do what you say you will, and you will have done better than 99% of the people. And having experienced it myself, I can tell you that it is true. And she gave such a speech that I remember her as vividly as the parasailer who had gone on her adventure. So from fending off unwanted male interest in trying to take over her companies all the time, to being a chairman of the board, she's had an illustrious career, not only as an executive director at Goldman Sachs, but now as an entrepreneur and founding her own company of 500 million. Okay, after splitting, but really impressive career there. So the first question I have is, we have this stereotype when we think of a CEO as being overwhelmingly male, tall and possibly white. So what is it like to be a CEO of a really large firm and having built it up yourself?
I think I am a very direct speaker, and you'll see this very quickly, but without sugarcoating any of this, I think that the women that are coming up behind us will probably have a smoother passage than we have had. I can honestly say that in the UK, the number of role models that I have had that are women have been quite limited. When I first began at JP Morgan, there was no emerging markets business, and I was lucky enough to be one of the first people, or the first 8 people in that business, and this was when it was just beginning. And I remember one thing that was really defining, and I think this is a characteristic that you need to have in business life, irregardless of your sex. It's this absolute focus that you will enjoy, and passionate is actually quite an overused word, although it's appropriate, but that you will really enjoy and want to spend that much time doing that job. It's a bit for me like marriage. honestly. It's like, who do you want to spend that much time with? They better really turn your number. They better really turn you on, because it's a lot of time when you're married. You really have to love your job. I mean, you want to really adore it, because you want to be in it all the time. And that kind of, I think you need real stamina, and you need real vision to want to build something. And in my case, I build businesses. I like to start businesses. I've started businesses at JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, a hedge fund, and then this African private equity vehicle.
What personal characteristics do you think you brought to the table that made you sail through it so effortlessly?
Well, I guess I would say that I must agree with you about a lack of role models. So when I started in this business, I worked for the one and only female managing director on Wall Street at the time. So this is back in the late 80s, so I think we were similar vintage. When I first started to work with this woman, she was a stereotypical woman that looked like a man. So she had very large shoulder pads, big frizzy hair, wore a bow tie, and double chain smoked. And everybody said, you really don't want to work with this lady because, she chews people up and spits them out. And funny enough, I took that a little bit as a challenge to say, I want to understand what makes her tick, and if she is the only role model I have, let me understand, how she got to where she was. After a bit of time working with her, we found a connection, which was a bit of a challenge I set for myself, was how I want to find a way to have a connection with this individual, and somebody who I respected for getting where they got, but I actually felt that she wasn't being true to herself.
I know that Credit Suisse is one of the most respectable banking environments, because I can really distinguish Credit Suisse from all the other banks, because I felt that the respect for individuals that Credit Suisse has is unparalleled. I don't know about Goldman Sachs, but that's the perception I have of the other banks that I have known. So therefore it makes it easier for people to have their own personalities and individualities and earn respect by being yourself. And that's something really unique I found about Credit Suisse. I'm sure a lot of the credit goes to women like you who have been different from mainstream and yet forged your way and earned your respect for people to have this tolerance for differences and minorities and so on.
I guess maybe it starts because I was a minority and the only, the first, the whatever. But I tell you, I had an epiphany moment when I was in business school at Wharton. They put you in study groups, and they throw a bunch of disparate people together, and your study groups are a group of people that you're carried with throughout your whole school experience. And most of the time they give you a case study format where you together as a group of people are supposed to solve a problem. And I was fortunate enough at Wharton that my study group was incredibly diverse. So I was a finance person, and the other people around the table in my study group was I had the head of marketing for Godiva. I had a gentleman who was a mad scientist, who was the person who created the first laser eye surgery. At the time it was called radioperitomy. We moved on from them, but this chap was truly a mad scientist, didn't know anything about numbers or balance sheets or how to run a business, but he was trying to figure out how to commercialize this technology. So I had the mad scientist, the marketing person, the finance person, and then we had a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. So this was my group of people.
How well do women deliver these in managing companies or persuading their boards? In your experience, are directors selected because of prominence or diversity, as we just touched on the topic of value addition or diversity? As a owner, what would your ideal board be like? Would the choice of preferred characteristics differ for a CEO vis-a-vis an owner? If you were a CEO, would you want a different set of people for your board? Vis-a-vis if you were an owner, would it be different? This question is for both of you.
It wouldn't be different for me. I own my own company, actually. This African Agricultural Company is my company. And so I am the chairman of the board in my own company. And that wouldn't differ if I was on a board in any case. What I think is quite imperative is that you have diversity on the board. And it is the most important place to have diversity in a company, almost. I think it is vital that there is a diverse board. And the characteristics that I think are quite important are to bring together, as Marissa said, different skill strengths. For example, I'm a lawyer by training, and I'm always looking for someone who has, there should be on any board someone with good legal skills. There should be somebody who's got very strong analytical skills. There should be somebody who can represent government interests. There should be somebody who understands the government formula in that country.
Well, I mean, you asked many questions within questions, but I would say on the board one, I agree wholeheartedly. It's the same answer with solving the case study at Wharton, that if you don't have a diverse board, you will get groupthink, and that is one of the biggest issues in the financial services industry, is that you have monochromatic boards, everybody with that same background, and as a result, because it was a clubby atmosphere, nobody wanted to challenge, and frankly, I'm not even sure it was a question of whether people wanted to challenge or not, and were afraid to speak out. I frankly think everybody was thinking so homogeneically that they never saw the problems coming. And unless you can have a diversity of thought, you aren't going to have those challenges. And if you think about the fiduciary responsibility of a board, it is to suggest, to probe, to ask questions, to provide a governance structure to the executive management and the management of the company. And I think you're not equipped to do that unless you come at it with different perspectives.
That leads me to my next question, that the representation of women on boards is a mere 16.5%. That's despite research statistics showing that about close to 90% of Fortune 500 companies have at least one woman on their board. And another research by Leeds Business University, which shows that where there was a woman in the board, the probability of bankruptcy was reduced by 20%. That meant that women were bringing on board a different set of skills that prevented companies from going under. And we also agreed just now that supply side is not a constraint, that we don't have any dearth of talented women, but it's still not happening. One of the oft-quoted reasons is that it takes the golf club, the CEO club, and it's a men-only club, and somebody higher up there, they recruit their buddies, and no one is out there looking out for women. So probably you need to have mentors, or very few women like you. You just had one Wall Street woman to look up to, and fortunately in our era we have a lot more women like you. So probably we need to be watching out for other women. I don't know the reality as clearly as you see. What are the strategies, what are the solutions for this problem? Because clearly it's in benefit of the corporate world to have more women representation.
So is it about board representation or women coming through the ranks, or both?
Both.
Is your question?
Both.
Okay. Well, I can certainly answer the on the corporate side, because I'm sitting now in the corporate world, not on board. And I frankly think I view it personally as my obligation to nurture and help mentor and champion the next generation of women. And I spend personally a huge amount of my my non-work time trying to figure out ways to creatively address the issue. And I think you have to come at it from a variety of factors, because women in the workforce face a number of challenges that their peers don't. And if I look at where we lose people in the investment banking arena, probably our biggest inflection point is at the place where women are going through two major things in their lives and their careers that coincide at the same time. A lot of our women choose to delay families until they are in their 30s, which tends to coincide with when their job is transitioning from an associate to a vice president. So what's happening is the job function changes from being a deal processor to a deal originator, where you are charged with being part of the group that brings in business with clients.
That's the cultures of these institutions are all really different. And some institutions are much more progressive and much more supportive of women in the workforce. And even when I was at JP Morgan, I went to JP Morgan purposely. This is the old JP Morgan. I joined in 1986 because it was at that time the most diverse bank that I could find. I did a full-scale analysis of every investment bank, and it was absolutely, unquestionably, kind of a blue chip, really wildly diverse for the times. I could not believe how many women were at that bank. I mean, it was extraordinary in terms of culture and gender. It was a diverse institution. And then going to Goldman Sachs, which was an excellent institution, but when I was there were not a lot of women. I mean, I was the only woman heading a business in Europe. I mean, it was truly, and that was in the mid-90s, so that just shows you that was quite recent. And that is on one of the offices in the debt side. So it was quite shocking, and so Morgan was progressive despite the times. And so you can find institutions that are big institutions, and I think you've got to, wear the shoe that fits and feel quite comfortable in that environment. And when I would go and interview with some of these institutions, and even now when I go into certain offices, you know right away that the fit would be poor or the fit would be great. You can feel it, and you can actually feel the authenticity. You can feel whether you would feel comfortable in that kind of environment. I mean, the environment that I work in now is quite different. I mean, I work in a full-scale male-dominated environment. So I have gone from Goldman to Agri, and it is quite unusual to be. I think I'm the only female operator in Africa, farm operator in Africa. In fact, Sangeeta has told me this about a week ago. And so there aren't many females that run farming businesses in Africa. And bottom line is that I think Africa is the most exciting place on the planet right now, which is why I want to focus there. I adore it.
So the question is really, what advice do you have for somebody who's reaching that level? And it is kind of a circular process that person is going through, I suppose, asking herself whether she is strong enough to do that. And knowing the person well, I know that she does sometimes let her emotions show, but and I suppose looking at that situation, trying to filter out what elements of this are basically due to structural sexist issues, and what she can deal with, and just any practical advice you could give her for people she can connect to and mentors like you guys. Thank you.
I think we're going to answer this a little differently, and I'm going to give the blunt answer, and then I'm sure you're going to give the multi-tiered answer, which is great, because that's actually the alternative one. But if you're a boss, if you try the multi-tiered component, which I'm sure that Marissa's going to probably outline, but if you try different avenues and they fail, and you really do feel that you are in a zone where your upside is limited and your boss is not supportive of you, then I truly think that you should look elsewhere. And I also think, generally speaking, in building a business, and I say this for myself as well, if something isn't working, then you change it, and you disconnect if it's not working at all. Okay, so you disconnect and leave the company. If something isn't working, then I actually think you have to destroy it to rebuild it properly.
As financial institutions are not exactly popular, how would the panel treat their association with JP Morgan, Credit Suisse, Goldman Sachs, etc., in their own personal balance sheet? Would it be an asset or a liability?
Great question. Well, since I work for one of them, I'm in the middle of it. I think that this is such a complex subject. But I would say, why am I still in this industry? I mean, I derive all of my self-satisfaction by being in this business. And I firmly believe that financial institutions have an important and critical mission in society. It's to help the flows of capital, to build businesses, to provide the lifeblood of capital, to grow the economy, and so on and so forth. The issue that we face, and it's always the case with difficult scandals, is it's usually a handful or a few that are the bad seeds, if you will, that cause the reputational problems within the industry. But the fundamental purpose of financial institutions in society is very clear. Unfortunately, a lot of things happened, and it was the spiral of a whole lot of things coming together that got us into a bad place, and we need to work ourselves out.
My name is Susan Payne. I am the executive chairman of MVest Agricultural Corporation, which is an integrated agricultural business and food business based in sub-Saharan Africa. Today I was a speaker at the Nehru Center in London, and tomorrow is International Women's Day, so I was very enthusiastic to speak today to a collection of men and women in the audience. I think that these occasions are important because women are still grossly misrepresented and underrepresented on boards, particularly in the UK, but across Europe. And we have to change that now. And we have to have much better collaboration between men and women at a senior level in industry and in finance and in all businesses, frankly, and in Africa as well.
Hello, my name is Marisa Drew, and I am a managing director at Credit Suisse, and I look after a group we call Global Market Solutions. So in terms of my thoughts on today's panel discussion, I personally got a lot out of just listening to my fellow panelists. I think anytime that you get women together and share their life experiences and their lessons learned, it's a pretty powerful way to encourage others and to inspire others. And I think the back and forth in today's session also with the audience was especially helpful and constructive. So I thank the Nehru Center for organizing this, and I thank the team for the ability to have had the opportunity to share my thoughts.
We had an incredible opportunity today to invite two of the panelists that I really admire a lot. They are my role models who have had very successful careers in Goldman Sachs and Credit Suisse and have gone on to found $500 million businesses. I had the privilege to ask them some really deep questions for which they shared their personal life experiences and insights. And I'm really glad that I can call them my friends. So it was an honor for me to call them here and celebrate their achievements on the occasion of International Women's Week. And Nehru Center has been my patron for my art, and they were the first gallery to exhibit my show, The Poetry of Being Women, in September. And I'm here again showcasing a few more new pieces of my new collection from the Junoon-e-Ishq. I'm really thankful to the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, in whom I have found a very able patron.